So I guess to start things off, you and I were talking about this morning. Why don't you discuss how, especially in light of the fact that you're in a room full of creative people, how has mobile sort of shattered the old way of doing things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the traditional media processes, you get a brand brief, and I think that's very relevant right now because that's what you're all working on as teams, and that's what you do in your day-to-day. And typically, these brand briefs come down as they're very researched, a lot of analytics, that go into who your target audience is. It's using third-party data, historical data, audience insights that you have to help build and shape what you think your target audience is going to be. But I think because mobile is moving so fast, we can't rely on the standard methodologies to identify your target audience. That's something that we've found to be very interesting when we see what brands come to us and they say, okay, this is our target audience. And I think this is this is one of my favorite examples. We worked with a QSR brand, and following all their traditional models, the traditional way of looking at a brand brief, looking at your audience insights, doing your brand studies, your brand surveys, they said, okay, our audience, super healthy. Okay, I know QSR, but still, they're like, our audience is super healthy. Outside of our QSR location, they go to Whole Foods and they go to Equinox. And they are just like the, healthy person that you would go to. And when we looked at mobile, what we found, according to their visitation behavior, is that they weren't, in fact, frequenting these locations that they put together for their audience profile. They were actually going to all other fast food restaurants. So I don't know whether they were happy about that information, but
so the question becomes then do they go to the client where they are, or do they have to repivot to?
So that's really the whole goal of what we're talking about as far as separating mobile from your traditional or from your desktop or your digital methodology for setting up that audience. It's looking at visitation behavior, and I'll show you a couple different examples of the way that we try to help our partners develop that audience outside of just what they think they know. And then exactly that, the client kind of said, okay, well now what? Are we going to invest more money trying to get our audience to be that healthy audience, or are we going to put our money where our customers are? Mm-hmm. So it became a much broader conversation outside of just mobile. It was a much bigger opportunity to go back to the client and provide them with some deeper level insights.
And when you're talking about visitation, this is location data that we're talking about?
Yes. Primarily, and we'll show you a little something, but this is really what I'm talking about, reimagining the RFP process. I think that mobile, it is so important to ask questions, exactly as Allison was saying, that most people are at novice or below novice level in mobile education, that if you have people that, understand the mobile space, go to them and ask them about data, ask them about what they see, what are the trends as far as measurement, performance, specific to each category. And so, one example, we want to look at the data-driven RFP specifically for mobile. So our first component is really first-to-market research. This is something we've actually partnered at xAd with Nielsen on a mobile path to purchase. And we said, okay, we're going to study several different verticals. We have auto, restaurant, retail, telecom, et cetera. It kind of runs the gamut. And we measure, both from a survey and a behavioral portion, an audience that actually went on to complete a purchase within that category. So not just someone, on the street like, oh, hey, are you interested in auto? It's like, no. You actually went and purchased a car. So what happened on mobile and tablet to help get you there? And some of the insights that we see, what are the main factors that affect that purchase decision? Is it price range? Is it proximity? Is it content alignment? And when it comes to mobile and tablet, price range, relevancy, but location as context, or location or proximity is the number one factor in driving that purchase decision. And these will vary a little bit from device, like tablet, mobile, and then also by category. But this is just one area where we can look at actual purchase data from mobile by category that can help influence your plans. And then this one is kind of my favorite when it comes to mobile is, if we're in retail, you want to put most of your money, or you think you might want to put most of your money at Black Friday, Cyber Monday. That's like the holiday season. That's where you think everyone is shopping. But At xAd, we actually have a search network that's an aggregate. So if you go into kind of the Apple Store, you'll see Google for map and navigation, and then everything else within there. xAd powers the sponsored listings and all of the search, the localized listings. So what that means is we have an aggregate of real-time search data coming across our platform that we leverage for campaigns, but we also look at historical information to help us see these different trends and spikes in activity.
Yeah, so a question about that. If your data sort of comprises everything except that Google slice of the pie, how big of the data slice are you guys actually missing?
Yeah, we're getting about 40 to 60% dependent, but it's 5 million search queries each day. And then the other interesting thing that we talked about is, Google, obviously, they've got 97% of search engine covered, but when it comes to map and nav, they don't really have all of the space there. Not only that, but because of antitrust laws, they can't actually tie that search data back to display. And I think that's a really big differentiator for what we're able to do, is to leverage these real-time insights. But so looking at what our platform says, when looking at the traditional set, you would think, okay, Black Friday, that's when we're going to spend most of our money for retail. That's when people are shopping. That's when they're out there. But when you look at the actual mobile space, search data uncovers that Black Friday, there's a peak, there's a little spike there. But what we really, what we really saw was that the night before Christmas was actually the highest, had the highest volume of search activity across all of the applications that we had in our network. So when you look at flight dates for different campaigns, a lot of them, like from our end before Christmas. They think, okay, we're going to flight everything November, 2 weeks in. People are going to plan their shopping. But when it comes to mobile, it's significantly different from desktop behavior. So that's one way we're looking at real-time search intent to help influence that mobile process.
Everyone's cramming for their finals.
Yeah.
Can you go back a little bit and discuss location, which you had mentioned earlier, and how accurate it is?
Yeah, location is a tough space. I think first when you look at, as Allison mentioned, 40% are mobile novices. Then there's a huge subset of that for location. I mean, it's so important, and you can't really say, I think you can't say mobile without talking about location these days, because inherently your phone is with you at all times. So it's where are you throughout the day. And we look at location as context, and location as that mobile context, location as cookie. But in order to accurately tap into that, you have to have some sort of a verification process. You can't just assume or take every publisher's word for it, because, like those numbers from those publishers, sometimes they're a little bit, whatever. But you have to double check everything. I think one thing we talked about was when you go into the maps on Google and you're trying to find out where you are, you see the little dot and it's like hovering away, and then like it takes a few seconds, kind of zigzags around and like bebops around and then jiggers a little bit, and then finally it's static. But that's Google, which is a really massive platform, and if you had ad delivery tied to that single location verification process, it would take too long for that ad to be delivered accurately. So it's really important to look at layers of multiple signals and then verify them as well.
You said, and I'm sorry to throw you off your slides, but
No.
you said that magic word cookie, which, as we know in mobile, is sort of a non-starter, or at least it's a different ballgame. How do you solve for the cookie problem on mobile?
Yeah, first one thing, you hear a lot of people talking about desktop cookies and how there's like a 30-hour life cycle of the desktop cookie, and is there really a cookie in mobile? And in fact, there is a mobile cookie, but it's only on Android web. So when you look at, like 70% of inventory or even more than that being on mobile application, that's a really small portion that you're able to leverage a cookie. So what we're looking at is moving outside of that traditional online cookie, which is what website you went to and then where you went after that, being able to follow. We're looking at visitation behavior and saying, okay, what location did you go to before? Where did you go? Where were you during? And then where did you go after, let's say, visiting a retailer like a Best Buy or something like that? And that kind of expands into what we have up on the slide is footprints. Most recently, this is kind of our third tactic to help influence that mobile component, is real-time visitation behavior. And so right now, we've got a platform that runs about 10% of all of our inventory through it. It takes about like 6 servers to run this thing. But it shows in real time all the opportunities or all of the ad calls tied back to business locations. And this is extremely, like, to see something like this, to see the scale that you have out there, to see the opportunity. I think when I look at auto brands and you can see I'm Ford and I can see everyone else on my competitor's lot and you can see that opportunity, I mean, I want that. I want to be able to give you that and say, take all of this, conquest, that's so important to you. This is an opportunity to speak to your customer base.
What's the privacy concern there, or the pushback from customers?
Privacy when it comes to mobile is huge. I think, when you look at recently in the press, iOS 8 announced that they were, going to be sending randomized MAC addresses, and I got a lot of emails from people, what does this mean for location? Does this mean that no one's passing accurate location anymore? But Apple kind of in the first place just said, if your hardware is sending out a signal trying to get a Wi-Fi, as most phones are on Wi-Fi, you're sending out the same MAC address every time. So it's not hashed, it's not changed, and you have no opportunity to refresh that. So just with the new iOS 8, they're randomizing that. But when it comes to how we look at the location signals, is we're looking at an Android ID or an Apple IDFA, which, as far as privacy goes, the Digital Advertising Alliance has self-regulation policy, and we're DAA compliant. We also work closely with Trustee, which is more like data security and verification. And then also we have, just with each of our publishers, we make sure that they have an opt-out policy for location. And then as well, when you look at the iOS 7 update, and I'm really only talking about Apple here, but we can talk about Android later, iOS 7 came out and they refreshed and said all location services are going to be turned on automatically. And so privacy, just in general, if you put the information out there, you have to be upfront, and that's why Apple was so concerned when it came to the MAC addresses. People didn't know that their hardware was being, sent out, that this code or this ID was being sent out every single time to just tons of Wi-Fi signals. And if you were basing anything off of that or logging that, then that's kind of going against what privacy is. It's about letting people know and giving them the option.
Okay.
Yeah. But then, so again, just looking at footprints, it's this real-time opportunity and how that can influence, like I said, conquesting. And then going into, again, changing that mobile behavior. We see people come to us as well with either a desktop strategy or a desktop KPI. And one example I like to talk about is when it comes to auto, right? A lot of auto brands on mobile will measure leveraging floodlight tags on their mobile web inventory. But as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the inventory out there is application. So if you're only measuring a certain subset of your campaign, how do you know if that mobile component was really successful? So something, we actually spoke earlier about mobile trends. And one thing I call out and I hear very often is offline measurement. Is that phone calls? Is that map and driving directions? Or is that store visits or dealership visits? This has become a really big trend in mobile, and I think we have to get a really solid understanding. But again, location ties back into all of those components. If you're a dealer association, you've got a specific offer in this market, and your consumer is over here, and they get served that offer, they go into this dealership, and they're like, but I want 0% APR, and that dealer's like, well, I'm only offering 2%. So that's a really big disconnect, and so that's where location just ties all the way back into all of those components.
So can you bring, so a lot of this is sort of from like 5,000 feet in the air looking down.
Yeah, we're talking a lot.
To can you bring this to a place that it maybe is more relevant or resonates to the people here who are working on briefs and coming up with a creative solution?
Absolutely. I think it's about having that conversation up front and separating mobile out from the rest. It's not saying mobile is completely separate, but looking at a different data set to help influence your mobile component of this campaign. And sometimes mobile can be, an amplifier to all of the different verticals that you're using media. But it's about having that conversation with your partner. And so when we're sitting here today, as you are working on your briefs, and I know this is a competition, and I myself am really competitive, so if there is any way that I can help, when it comes to, if you want some path to purchase insights to kind of throw into your brief from a mobile standpoint, if you want some real-time behaviors or some insights specific to different verticals, I'm available for the next 2 days and want to be able to help you see how this actually can influence and make your team stand out from the other teams. So
No favorites. You can't
no
pick
favorites.
Great. Is that your
That is, and
final
that is
slide?
everything.
Okay, well, happy to